Okay, so there's a pay-per-view coming up this weekend. It's called Extreme Rules, the horror show. So after this review is over, I'll give a quick little rundown of some of the matches that have been announced for the show so far. But yeah, we're gonna go all the way back to Extreme Rules 2009. This is actually the very first official Extreme Rules pay-per-view, and it's kind of tricky. ECW One Night Stand, 2005, 2006, but the first year where they had the One Night Stand Extreme Rules stipulation was 2007, but the official pay-per-view was called One Night Stand, and the same thing for 2008. I think in 2008 they actually called it One Night Stand, and then they had the Extreme Rules logo like at the bottom of the poster. So, but the thing is, it was supposed to be, a one night only type of thing. The pay-per-view format changed in 2009 where they added all these gimmick pay-per-views. And so now we have, so in 2009, this is the very first branded Extreme Rules pay-per-view. This is actually from New Orleans, Louisiana. And I would definitely say this is a good show. I would say that, this might have been the second best Extreme Rules pay-per-view to date. And I would definitely say one of the best main events of 2009, and probably one of the best, maybe one of the top three pay-per-views of 2009, without a doubt. So let's get right down to it. First match of the night, you had Kofi Kingston, MVP, Matt Hardy, and William Regal, fatal four-way match for the United States Championship. Yeah, not a pretty match, a little bit botchy. But these are four, quality, I would say definitely underrated workers right here. I really enjoyed the match, even though, some of the stuff did come off a little bit botchy. At the time, TNA was obsessed with doing that triple suplex off the top rope, and they tried doing one here, and it just didn't come off that well. Ended up with Regal actually having to settle for like a T-bone. Pretty nasty looking match. Matt Hardy was not healthy here. He actually had his arm in a sling. William Regal actually just won the King of the Ring. MVP was, I think MVP was still a heel at this point. And I think he turned face going into SummerSlam. But yeah, this is all about Kofi Kingston. Kofi actually got the victory here, retaining the United States Championship. And trying to think, the United States Championship was actually on Raw at the time. And, this is a big win for Kofi. Kofi would get that mega push against Randy Orton at the end of the year. So, yeah, this is this was a solid way to start off the show. Not a great opener, but, definitely good stuff. And then next up, we have Rey Mysterio taking on Chris Jericho. This is a no-holds-barred for the Intercontinental Championship. And, great stuff here. This was a great trilogy. Mysterio and Jericho didn't really click into 2009. When you look back on it, these guys have been wrestling all over the world, since, the early 90s, I guess. And, they never really got a chance to really do serious business until you get to 2009. This is a great trilogy. Judgment Day, they had a good match. Extreme Rules, they had a great match here. And then even at the Bash, they had, one of the top three WWE matches of the year. And that was definitely an amazing match. But yeah, this was almost just as good. This was great stuff here. And but it really is funny when you look back at WCW. The matches that I've seen from them, they just weren't anything special. They just didn't get enough time. They had kind of weird finishes. And even in the WWE, the only time they really worked when they got to the WWE was at a it was like a Spike TV video game special. At the time, Jericho was on Raw, Mysterio was on SmackDown, so they didn't really touch during the early days of the brand extension. And, the only time I remember them wrestling, if anyone remembers this, they had like a Spike TV video game special where they actually brought out a wrestling ring in this weird venue. If you remember, Jenna Jameson was actually the special ring announcer for that match. So that's really the only time I remember them wrestling in WWE. So you have to wait until they get to 2009. And but yeah, at the time they were on SmackDown. It's the summer of 2009. A lot of people thought SmackDown was the best show on television, for that summer. It really was. And this match right here was no holds barred. They didn't do a lot of wacky things with foreign weapons. They brought out a chair, so they did some unique stuff with the chair. Mysterio going for the West Coast pop, Jericho countering it into the walls of Jericho. Jericho busted out like a code breaker to some of Mysterio's offense here in midair. So you definitely had a lot of great stuff here. But, what you remember about this match is the ending. Jericho actually rips Mysterio's mask off as Mysterio's doing the 619, and then he schoolboys him for the victory. Jericho wins the IC title for like the 9th time. Just very well done. Just great stuff. These were probably the top 2 MVP candidates in 2009. I mean, yeah, Mysterio, he had an awesome year in 2009. He definitely lost weight, got back in shape, and he really had an amazing first half of 2009 without a doubt. And, Jericho probably, ended up winning his 2nd MVP in a row when you look back on it. And it was because of matches like that. All right, so next up, you actually had CM Punk taking on Umaga. This is a Samoan strap match. And yeah, pretty average match right here. Punk had his ups and downs at this time. There was a lot of negativity towards Punk at the time. A lot of people were pissed that he won the Money in the Bank for a 2nd year in a row. I remember a lot of people actually hated the gimmick, and as far as his work in WWE, a lot of people just didn't think he was adapting to the WWE style. But the match with Umaga, it was all right for a Samoan strap match. It's tough to make these matches work, especially when you got a guy that's about to turn heel. It just didn't have a lot of juice to it, but it was okay for what it was. You remember Umaga actually passed away later on that year in December. So it should be interesting to see, this might have been one of Umaga's last matches. So it would be interesting to see exactly what was happening to Umaga leading up to his death. But yeah, I remember the YouTube community was really shaken up about Umaga's death. That was very unexpected at that time. But yeah, Punk, if you guys remember, Punk actually won the Money in the Bank at WrestleMania 25, and he got booed. But yeah, that was definitely a wake-up call, and, definitely come into play later on in the night. All right, so next up you had an ECW match. This is a triple threat hardcore rules match for the ECW championship. You had Christian taking on Tommy Dreamer, taking on Jack Swagger. And yeah, ECW at the time, it ended up becoming more of like a pure wrestling show. When you think about ECW in 2009, you think about pure wrestling matches where Christian is taking on Jack Swagger. Remember, they had an excellent match at Backlash. And, because this is an Extreme Rules match, it was only right to put Tommy Dreamer in the match. So this was kind of him just trying to keep that little bit of ECW spirit alive. He actually won the ECW title here. I'm not sure if this was the last time Dreamer or the first time Dreamer won it. I know he actually won the title in the original ECW, and he was upset about it. So yeah, but for Dreamer to win the ECW championship, the heart and soul of ECW. You guys know how much ECW meant to Tommy Dreamer. So, but yeah, the match was actually pretty cool. This would have been a great main event if this main evented the ECW TV show. They brought out kendo sticks, trash cans. Christian did some beautiful baseball slides. Just really good action, for the amount of time that it went. All right, so next up from there, you have Vickie Guerrero taking on Santino Marella. This is actually a hog pen match for the Miss WrestleMania crown. I don't have much to say about this. Chavo actually got involved. Vickie was very nicely dressed up, but she didn't want to compete in the match. After this match is over, Vickie was complaining to Edge about how, Edge didn't help here. Chavo actually took some nasty bumps in the mud and everything like that. But yeah, this is one of those matches that's just done for entertainment purposes. Remember back in the day, they had the Godwins compete in matches like this. But, I'll say this about Vickie Guerrero, though. It's an incredible transformation when you look at where Vickie Guerrero was when she was still married to Eddie. And you look at her, you even look at her now, she really grew as a performer. And I think it's one of Vince McMahon's crowning achievements from an individual character standpoint to see, how far Vickie Guerrero came. All right, so from there you have the steel cage match for the WWE Championship. You have Randy Orton taking on Batista. At the time, they actually used Ric Flair in this feud. At the time, Flair was actually working for Ring of Honor and WWE. It was just one of those things where, like, Flair just couldn't retire. Like, he just didn't want to stay out of the spotlight. And, Batista was trying to get his revenge on Orton for, beating up Flair. Orton and Flair had like a parking lot brawl on Raw. So, Batista wants to get his revenge back. But I'll tell you, man, I'm just not a big fan of a lot of the Evolution, single stuff. And in a way, it's kind of like what Bret Hart was worried about with the Clique. Like, he was like, oh man, they all want to work. They all want to work together. It's like, that's not fair. But, when you look back at it, like the Evolution guys, I don't know, like their one-on-one stuff just doesn't hold up over time. Like whether it be Orton versus Flair, especially Batista versus Orton, especially Triple H versus Orton, like a lot of the singles matches just don't hold up for me. And even the video package here just didn't keep my interest. And yeah, Randy Orton was going through a weird time. This is actually the same month Mr. Kennedy got fired by the WWE. It came out that, one of the reasons he got fired is because Orton actually overreacted in that match on Raw. You remember that match on Raw where they were dressed up as the Lakers and the Nuggets because there was a situation where they had to move the Lakers game because Raw was going to be held in Denver. So something weird happened that night where Mr. Kennedy ended up getting fired. You remember he actually hurt Cena. Then he ends up almost hurting Orton. And, it's just one of those things where I think, there was a report that came out that Randy Orton had, a lot of expenses at the time. Like he put a lot of money into a lot of different things. So he was adamant that he did not want to get hurt. And it makes a lot of sense because when you look back at 2009, you could definitely see Randy Orton really kind of, the match is really starting to underdeliver. I really feel like this was around the time where Orton really started changing his style, more slower paced, the not taking a lot of risks. So, Edge even brought it up in, some of the previous promos. And, but, there's a couple different ways to look at it. In a lot of ways, Orton probably prevented a lot of injuries from really, slowing down his style. But, back to this match with Batista here, the steel cage match. Not too memorable, but Batista was definitely getting stale. This eventually led to him turning heel. With Batista was injury after friggin' injury. It really was. And I didn't notice any injury here, but, the next night on Raw, Batista had to forfeit the championship. This is what I remember about the match. I remember they wanted to hide the injury, so Batista basically almost semi-squashed Orton here. The match was very short. Batista ended up, Orton was trying to escape the cage. Basically, Batista power bombs the crap out of Orton, and he beats Orton in like 5 minutes. It's basically like a semi-squash match. But I remember the report came out that they wanted to have Batista win in that fashion to hide the injury, and I think they did a good job of it. I didn't notice that Batista was that injured. They were able to wrestle 5 minutes without me really noticing that Batista was in a lot of pain. So this is what I remember. Like, actually, I don't remember much about it. I just remember that Orton somehow, some way ended up winning the title back. Batista must have forfeited the title the next night on Raw. Orton somehow, some way wins it back because, you do know that he took on Triple H at the Bash. He came into the Bash as the champion, but I can't remember exactly how, Randy Orton won the title back. Maybe you guys might remember. I'm not sure. All right, so from there we have John Cena and The Big Show. This is a submission match. And, really, really good stuff here, man. I didn't think it was bad at all. There's going to be a lot of mixed feelings on this. Anytime you think of Big Show in a 20-minute plus match, you'll think of, negative work rate. But, it was actually really good. Jerry Lawler, like, I think he's a bigger fan of, the territorial days. Obviously he's from Memphis and all that stuff. He's just more of a fan of slower paced submission wrestling. And, because Big Show's in a 20-minute match is very slow paced, but it features some good storytelling. Even Cena, jumping on the Big Show's back, trying to put in the sleeper hold, Jerry Lawler was like, oh man, he can't sink that sleeper hold in because Big Show's on his feet. So it's just interesting to see how Cena would immobilize Big Show, trying to take him off its feet. Eventually, he actually tied him up on the ropes to lock in the STFU. And yeah, it was just, the setup for the submission was pretty well done. It was just interesting to see these guys work together. Big Show, actually, you saw him bust out some nice submissions that you don't normally see him do. And yeah, it wasn't a bad match at all. You would think a submission match would have rope breaks, but I guess there was no rope breaks in this match. So Cena actually wins the match by submission, as the Big Show's legs are tied up on the ropes. So that's how it went there. So yeah, this is one of the 4 million Big Show heel turns. If you guys forgot, Big Show actually turned heel by choke slamming Cena through a spotlight back at Backlash in that Last Man Standing match with Edge. All right, and now next up we have the main event. We have a ladder match for the World Heavyweight Championship. It's Edge taking on Jeff Hardy, and it's hard to even remember who the champion. Obviously, Edge was the champion here, but at the time, Edge didn't walk out with the championship. They had the world title, hanging from the rafters, before both guys came out. So yeah, Edge versus Jeff Hardy here. I believe Edge and Hardy actually had a match at Judgment Day. So this is the rematch, the ladder match at Extreme Rules. Jeff Hardy actually won the title in a triple threat match back at Armageddon. And then I think Matt Hardy screwed him out of the belt at the Royal Rumble. So Jeff actually wins the belt back. At the time, Jeff Hardy just had a lot of momentum. The kids, the families. He was just a monster babyface. He had a new theme song. This is just one of those many, predicaments that Edge ended up getting involved in with ladder matches. It's like, when Edge came back from neck surgery, he was adamant that he didn't want to be like in ladder matches. But when you look back at it, like he ended up being in Money in the Banks. He ended up doing the TLC with Cena, and he thrown into another, main event ladder match with Jeff Hardy here. I would say this, it was a good, exciting ladder match without it being, too dangerous. Edge and Hardy took some bumps off the ladder. They both actually, fell off the top of the ladder onto another ladder. They, they played off of the, WrestleMania X7 spot with Edge doing the, spear to Jeff Hardy, from ladder to another ladder here. But only this time, Jeff actually counters it into a twist of fate in midair. And, just really exciting stuff. Jeff Hardy doing the whisper in the wind off the top of the ladder. It was a good, exciting, definitely one of the better main events of the year. Just excellent stuff. It's just amazing to see, these two guys, start off as in tag teams, 10 years earlier, the main event of No Mercy. And then, 10 years later, they're in a singles match of a pay-per-view. It doesn't happen very often where you have, two guys that come from tag teams eventually wrestling in a singles match and the main event of a pay-per-view for a championship. It's an incredible story when you think about it. And the ending was pretty cool. Jeff actually had Edge, tied up in the ladder, and then he grabs the championship as Edge is stuck in the ladder. And but the highlight of the show is CM Punk. If you guys don't remember, CM Punk actually cashes in his Money in the Bank briefcase. And Jeff is so fatigued, he's worn out. He's just sitting down, just, trying to muster up something. And this was cool. I wasn't a big fan of the way CM Punk won the Money in the Bank the previous year. He won it as a babyface. I think Batista powerbombed the shit out of Edge. And then Punk actually, was champion to open up Raw. It was actually the night after the Great American, I think it was a Great American Bash or, whatever pay-per-view it was in June. I actually, to be honest with you, I believe it was Night of Champions, if I'm not mistaken. Night of Champions 2008. Punk actually won the belt as a babyface by pinning Edge. So we fast forward a year later. So this time, Punk actually cashes in on Jeff Hardy. It was cool though, man. The facial expression from Punk after Jeff kicked out of the go to sleep was awesome. He was like, "You got to be kidding me." So yeah, you actually had some back and forth here with Jeff actually doing a small package to get a near fall. So, Punk was actually a little bit nervous, that he wasn't going to win this thing. And then, Punk actually hits a second go to sleep. The go to sleep came off great. You could tell it was full contact, knee right to the skull. Jeff sold it greatly. So Punk, becomes the new world heavyweight champion after cashing in the Money in the Bank, and it came off great too. And some of the fans were excited, but overall, a lot of fans were kind of pissed off that Punk won it in that fashion, and it really started a great feud that Punk would have with Jeff Hardy. It was very reminiscent of Punk's feud with Raven in Ring of Honor, and he was able to kind of deliver a lot of the great promos he did on Raven, but this time, give it a WWE flavor with Jeff Hardy, and it was a very intense feud, and it's really interesting how the feud really took on a life of its own with Jeff eventually getting in trouble for drugs again after the feud was over. So very, very good show here. You had two great matches with Jericho and Mysterio, and the latter match with CM Punk cashing in with Edge and Jeff Hardy. All right, so let me just give you a quick little preview of Extreme Rules coming up this weekend. Honestly, guys, I'm not a big fan of this lineup so far. I was cool with the Intercontinental Championship not being a part of Backlash because, I understood that you want to give Edge and Randy Orton that kind of spotlight if you're going to give them those kind of expectations. But, not to get an IC title match at Extreme Rules, it kind of sucks. Who knows? SmackDown's on Friday, so maybe they'll announce a match. But, you haven't seen a lot of Daniel Bryan lately. I don't know. It's kind of weird. It's like it's tough to criticize the WWE at this time because we don't know what guys are getting sick. You want to be very cautious in terms of, you don't want to demand that much from people during these times. The other way of looking at it is like, man, there's really no sports going on. How come WWE doesn't capitalize and just give us some, great pay-per-views here? It's a very delicate way to look at it, but I don't know. With this pay-per-view right here, Extreme Rules, the horror show, the fact that they're calling it the horror show in the middle of July during these times, it's very head-scratching to me. I think people want positivity. I think when you attach the name the horror show to it, I just think the timing is kind of awkward. But that aside, Mysterio versus Rollins in an eye for an eye match. Not a big fan of the stipulation. Anytime. I don't know how they're going to do this here. Obviously, they're not going to take anyone's eye out. It's nasty to think about. That's like one of my biggest fears is to get an eye injury when playing sports. So I don't know. Mysterio and Rollins is a hell of a matchup. The build-up has been incredible, I would say, in terms of Rollins' character. And Mysterio has done some of the best mic work of his career. But yeah, you don't want to see anyone's eye taken out. But I guess they're going to do this in a way where they're just going to work the crowd or work the audience with someone getting their eye taken out. But I don't know. Just one of those things we have to wait and see. Braun Strowman and Bray Wyatt. This is going to be a Wyatt swamp fight. No, hopefully this is good. A lot of people didn't have very high expectations for the Boneyard match or any of those other segments, but, hopefully this could be a lot of fun. You guys don't want to hear me talk about Braun Strowman matches and Bray Wyatt matches. I don't really have much to say about it. I'm hoping the feud ends pretty soon, but, let's give them a chance here and see what they can do. The Universal title's not at stake there, so I'm assuming that Bray's probably going to go over. You got Apollo Crews and MVP. They've done a lot of, interesting things over the United States Championship. So MVP's actually redesigned the U.S. title. So, big match for Apollo Crews. Bayley's going to be taking on Nikki Cross. Bayley's heel turn's been interesting. She's showed a lot of personality since she's turned heel. I mean, it's really unique. She's like it's like a wrestling fan living out her dream. Being champion, and you're getting to see a different side of her personality. So I think Bayley's heel turns worked out pretty good so far. Asuka versus Sasha Banks should be an awesome match, very attractive match right there. That should be a lot of fun. Drew McIntyre is going to be taking on Dolph Ziggler. And for some reason, the storyline is that Dolph wants to play head games and he doesn't want the stipulation to leak until Extreme Rules to get the advantage there. If you guys had, I would have never thought of Drew McIntyre and Dolph Ziggler, rekindling their, the history. I wouldn't have even thought about, the history between them. it would have never crossed my mind that, oh man, go back to this because they have so much history together as a tag team. Or, Ziggler was using McIntyre at one point. I'm shocked that they actually went back to Ziggler. I guess it's just one of those situations where, I even, mentioned, I was kind of worried about the lack of opponents that you can give McIntyre. And, lo and behold, they bring out Dolph Ziggler. They make a trade. Ziggler goes to Raw. AJ goes to SmackDown. So Ziggler is going to get a title shot. I'll tell you what, though, the pressure is on for Ziggler. And when you look back at Kofi's reign, I really thought Ziggler was a lackluster opponent for Kofi, and it ended up kind of hurting Kofi's reign. So I think Ziggler really needs to deliver big time here. But, they do have a lot of history here. The segment with MVP in the VIP lounge between McIntyre and Ziggler was definitely good stuff. I think McIntyre's definitely brought it in terms of the mic skills. And but yeah, Ziggler really needs to have a good showing here. I don't know. Maybe it's going to be a ladder match, maybe a steel cage match. Who knows? Hopefully it's just something fun. But overall, this does not look like a good show. You have an incredible Intercontinental Championship picture right now with, Matt Riddle, AJ Styles, Drew Gulak. You haven't seen Daniel Bryan in a while, but, it's hard to really criticize WWE in these times. So I don't really know what to expect from this show. I'll review the show, but, this show does not scream must see. And, it's a gimmick pay-per-view. And, they're attaching the horror show to make it even more gimmicky. So I'm not too happy about that. But, what can I say? Hopefully SummerSlam is a better show. I think SummerSlam needs to be 2 nights. And I think, we'd like to see a lot more attractive names on the SummerSlam show. But yeah, so that's Extreme Rules, the pay-per-view review. And I'm out. All right.